Hello, how's it going? Today, I want to talk about balance through grounding and how we can achieve that and different ways to ground and what is grounding actually. Okay, so let's start with what is grounding? Um, if we think in the traditional sense of electricity, right? Grounding is channeling electricity into the ground so you're not overloading circuits or getting electrocuted, if you will. Um, if we also look at, okay, and this is the piece that I think a lot of people get a little lost on when I talk about energy, because it's not traditional knowledge. It's not stuff that we learn it, but in a roundabout way, and we apply it in different ways, right? So you're not learning about, well, let me start with what we do learn, okay? What we learn in school is about the earth, right? We learn a lot of things, but I'm taking it back to energy. What we understand is that we live on a ball of energy, okay? For the most part. At the core of the earth, there's magma, right? We understand that the planet has two poles, the North Pole, the South Pole. We have an equator, and the planet has meridian lines, right? Ley lines all over the planet. And what this does is it magnetizes, right? So what we understand is that the energy of the earth, the magnetic fields keep the earth rotating. And because of gravity and magnetic fields, we are in rotation around the sun, right? So what we do understand is that we live on a ball of energy. Now, how we conceptualize that is going to be different because oftentimes our brains like to compartmentalize. So we learn this in I don't know, science class 101, right? When we're little, and we just take it for granted, but we never generalize that information to nature or ourselves. So a lot of those same magnetic fields that exist in our planet exist within ourselves because we're standing on a magnet. So it makes sense that we also hold energy. People also have points of meridians. We have, like if you deal with an acupuncturist, or even acupressure or EFT tapping, right? That can really go a long way in managing and balancing out our energetic field, which oftentimes we call our aura, if you will. We have different points of entry and how that impacts our body. So we call that our chakra system, which is usually, and there's more too outside of the body, but within our body, you have your root chakra, you have your sacral chakra, you have your solar chakra, your solar plexus, your heart chakra, your throat chakra, your third eye chakra, and then you have your crown chakra. And there's more chakras, and there's definitely way more meridians. I took a training on EFT tapping. So perfect example. I had some pretty extensive dental work done, not this past Wednesday, but the one before, where my teeth were fine. It's just that I had really old fillings in there that we wanted to take out, extract, and, refill with something fresh and kind of repurpose the teeth. However, about 2.5 of them on this side, the teeth weren't integral enough to be able to just drill and fill. So I ended up getting 2.5 crowns put on at the same time. So I was basically under the drill, or let's put it this way. My appointment was 4 hours long. For at least 2 hours of that, they were drilling. So it was fun. And We don't need to go into it, but most people get a little anxious when you have to go under a drill, right? So I was able to really tap into my, which is, it's considered somatic therapy because you're working on your emotions through your body. And I was doing tapping. I would bring the emotion up. I would imagine myself through imagery at the appointment, and then I would tap it out at my meridians. And the main few that I learned in the EFT tapping class. But in all honesty, we have so many throughout our body. There's so many energetic points throughout our body. Everything's interconnected, and honestly, nothing is coincidence out here in that sense. Everything's connected. So with regards to the body, that is one way we can ground ourselves. Now let's talk about the emotional idea of grounding. That's like the energetic, and it has an impact on our emotions. It has an impact on our body because you can use tapping even for physical pain. It's not going to make it go away or cure the issue necessarily, but especially if the physical pain is brought on from stress, okay? Like emotional stress, not physical. If you have an injury or something, and with anything, obviously consult your doctor, okay? But I have found, like, if I have a headache, I can do tapping and not have to take a Tylenol or a Motrin or whatever, right? And ultimately, that's what I try to do because those things aren't really great for our gut and our overall system. Not the end of the world, and sometimes definitely better than having to call out sick or deal with the pain that comes with not taking it. However, just keep in mind, we don't want to overdo anything. So when we're talking about balance, anything that we're overdoing in our life, especially externally where we're taking it into our body, whether that be oral medication, and I'm also talking here about self-medicating, okay? I'm not talking about the doctor told me to take this. You work with your healthcare provider. You make sure you have one that you can trust and work with them, right? I'm not talking about I need this or, because I'm diabetic or whatever. You work with your doctor. It is better to not have or go into shock than it is to be easy on your gut, right? And there are different medications that can help alleviate certain things. So again, you do you. Okay, I'm just talking for like the average person who's not on medication, doesn't necessarily need it, but on occasion things come up and it can be beneficial, right? Like a Motrin, Advil, whatever, Aleve, any of those things. They have gotten me through days sometimes, literally. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm vilifying, okay? With anything, we have to look at our hierarchy and what is more important. But balance says, don't overdo anything, like even water, right? Drink water. Like I have my big 64 ounce battle jug, if you will. But I love this thing. It's 64 ounces. I fill it. I'm with spring water, filtered water. I make sure my minerals are in there. Everything is good. And I drink about 1.5 of those a day because I really don't drink too much of anything else. I kind of quit the coffee. I'll have one in a blue moon. I don't drink sugar or even carbonated anymore because I don't like how it impacts my stomach. And I'm also trying to quit sugar. So all the things. Good times. Anyway, I'm not telling you to do that. I'm just saying this is my journey here. This is what I'm trying to do to create my best health, okay? But my chemistry is different than yours. So you do you, work with your doctor, work with your practitioners, just make sure you trust them and that they're in alignment with your values and your, so that you can trust them. So that aside, tapping can really help with alleviating pain. It can help with alleviating emotional distress. Not a cure-all, but it can help bring it down a couple points. If you're you're coming in at an 8 on pain or something, it'll probably bring you down to a 5, which is a little more manageable than an 8. All right. But that is one alternative. If we're really stressed about something, or we know we have to be grounded so that our energy isn't bubbled up, because I also say energy is, I use it basically synonymously with emotion as well. Emotion is energy. That's why it's contagious. If someone comes in like, we have to ground ourselves, because that can be like, whoa. Well, that's not a coincidence. It's because you're actually feeling the impact of that energy coming off of them and it's hitting you. So if you're not in a balanced state, that can really throw you off, sometimes even for the day. If someone calls you up with a problem and you find yourself ruminating about that problem all day, or God forbid, they call you up with tragic news. Oftentimes we all ruminate about tragic news, but be mindful. So when you hear me say be mindful, I'm saying be aware, pay attention, keep your finger on the pulse of how is that energy impacting your body. Okay, we are mind, body, spirit. And as you hear me say this all the time, mind being thoughts and beliefs, spirit being your essence, but also your energy, it's your emotions, okay? And then your body encapsulates all of the above. So whenever anything impacts one, it's going to impact the other two in some capacity. So when you feel that, when you are taking on somebody's energy, projected energy, that doesn't mean they're evil or that they mean to hurt you or this, that, whatever, but pay attention, because everyone's sensitivity level or perception is going to be a little different. I know people that someone can come in like a hurricane and they don't even notice it. I tend to be a little more sensitive than that. So I really work on my grounding, because if someone comes in at me like that, I don't want to be like this, right? I want to be able to be steady, pause, and respond, not react. So that is essentially what grounding is. It's the ability to be stable within yourself. Okay, so tapping, EMDR, which works with that bilateral stimulation, which is another form of tapping. It's not necessarily on the meridians, but it's working with the idea that you have 2 hemispheres in your brain. And when we stimulate both sides, it helps to kind of balance things into the middle. Okay, so amongst other things, but this is kind of the abridged version because I don't want to be on here for a half hour. So those are somatic ways that we can ground our body. Another way would be through breathing, as long as the breathing isn't stressing you out. So oftentimes when we learn new skills, we want to be able to practice them when we're in a calm, balanced state. We don't want to wait until we're triggered or stimulated to try to practice new skills, because they're not going to work for us. Because everything new is hard until we've done it enough times through repetition where it's easy. Okay, so with that, when we're calm and nothing's going on, we want to use some imagery to kind of get our emotions up a little bit, but in a safe way where we're not actually in the environment or in the triggering situation. We're just using imagery so that we can practice the skills to bring that down, to ground that. Okay. Grounding also can be as simple as rubbing your fingers together just to remind yourself that you're in your body. Because especially if we have trauma, it's so easy to disassociate. In fact, that's one of the potential pieces to help with diagnosing trauma is how often are you disassociating? Now, I'm not talking about daydreaming necessarily. I'm talking about when you're like in your regular life, how often are we triggered and we leave? We go somewhere else, whether we're going into our fantastical dreams, right? Our illusions that we create for ourselves as a safe place. That's going to be more prominent for some than others. The imaginative stories we tell ourselves. Sometimes we escape there because maybe we had to at one point. Maybe that was an adaptive skill to get us through our life. However, at some point that would be imagery. Too much imagination can be maladaptive because it's keeping us from being present in the moment, grounded. And it's just basically presence. It's being in the here and now in a balanced state. That's grounded. Okay. And I'm just kind of going over different ways that we can ground our energy. So yes, we can do through tapping. We can do through bilateral stimulation. We can do through deep breathing exercises where we're really bringing ourselves back to ourselves. And then we can even do cerebrally, which is top down, by reminding ourselves that we're safe. And again, make sure you are safe. Because a lot of this work we want to do in a safe place. We don't want to lie to ourselves or create new illusions. We want to heal. And we want to be able to be present in order to make discerning choices and responses that are in alignment with our best and highest good. All right? And that's hard to do when you're feeling like this. It's hard to do. If you're running late and you're like trying to catch up and you're just rushing through, oftentimes we can harm others that way, whether, God forbid, an accident, or maybe someone's really trying to tell us something, but we're not present because we're already 5 steps ahead because we're running late. So being grounded is really beneficial to our relationships and just our overall well-being. And it aids again with that balance. When we feel balanced, we are looking at things differently. We're not getting caught up in fear-mongering or projections of other people's emotions, which stem from their belief systems that may not even be in alignment with ours. However, when people say it strongly enough or they put it out there strongly enough, if we're not in a grounded state, we're going to absorb that. This is why you'll hear people say, observe, don't absorb. Because other people's belief systems do not have to be yours. Other people's emotions do not have to be taken on by you. You can deal with it differently through boundaries, which are easier to set and also secure, reinforce, if you will, when we are in a grounded state. So exercise, physical, work, like that can also help bring us into our body, clearly, and make us feel more present. Other things could be literally what you call earthing, right? Walking around barefoot, because that also helps with the energetic, grounding your energy into the earth, much like when we ground electricity. It makes us feel more stable. It makes us feel more relaxed, more in the moment. Gardening can be a really good one, or any kind of gardening. Like I don't have to be outside. Like in the winter, I garden with my plants, and I love having them around. Certain colors can be more stabilizing for us, more grounding, if we associate them with our chakras, right? If we want more grounding, then maybe your deeper reds, right, can be more grounding for you versus your purples, which seem more lighter somehow. I don't know. Everyone's going to be a little different. But colors can definitely bring out moods in us. Think about how you feel when you wear your favorite color versus black. A lot of people migrate to black if they're trying to hide stuff, right? Or if you're just in a black mood. Again, we use this stuff. This isn't made up, right? It's science in its own way. I have a rogue hair and it's tickling my forehead, so I apologize for that. It's kind of like quantum physics string theory. We understand that it exists, but most of us can't sit there and do the equations, right? We don't know the depth of it, but we understand that it exists. And that is the woo of the scientific world. There's so much unexplored science there that they're looking into and dealing with. Most of us will sit there and say, gosh, I'm low energy today. Or I'm really tired. Although it helps when we say, I feel really tired, because our brain always hears what we say. So we're going to definitely show up if we're identifying as being something. So be mindful of your words and your inner dialogue. That's one I'm working on, because it's so easy for me to say, I'm trying to reword that to I feel this today. It's a little different. Hits a little different. Kind of like that whole I get to versus I have to, right? So in any case, those are some tangible ways that we can ground, right? And then obviously mantras can help. Meditation can help. Prayer can help. Because we have to be present in order to have those dialogues, in order to position ourselves in such a way that we can relax. And sometimes even taking a shower can just help us be in the moment and present. Getting out in nature is so helpful, and it can just really be so soothing and calming. And these are ways and things that we can do that's not taking something from the outside and putting it in ourselves, okay? I deal with a lot of people that say they smoke marijuana, that helps ground them. Well, that could be beneficial, but if we're overdoing something, then it's not in balance. And if we're telling ourselves or feeding ourselves the belief system that we need something external to ourselves in order to be a certain way, then we're creating a behavioral dependency. We're getting out of balance, because we're also disempowering ourselves, saying we need something else or someone else in order to feel a certain way. You need nothing other than yourself, but you have to be willing to sit with those belief systems in order to reprogram that. Easier said than done, I know. Believe me, I know. I've done a lot of it. As a lot of us have, okay? So I don't want to make it sound, but that's the work. And that balancing can really help us deal with, especially in a world where we have so much information thrown at us, whether that's politically, whether that's, good Lord, so much. So much information. And we don't necessarily, like I always say, want to bury our heads in the sand, but we have to have the capacity to be able to hold that information if we're going to subject ourselves to it. Okay, some people just shut it off altogether. I like to have balance in my life. So I like to be informed, but I also when I do so, I'm tapping in with myself, or getting into myself and doing it from a grounded state. And when I find that I get too much, that's when I shut it off. And then I work with my cerebral around how I perceive that, and don't get caught up with the rumination and the anxiety of wanting to take control and say, well, it should be this, and start with the shaming and the rabbit hole of the world's going to end and this, that, and everything else, as so many people do. And then oftentimes when we don't use the discernment, we're not grounded and we're reacting on those triggers versus responding. Well, welcome to the internet. It's a lot of projection and vomiting of emotions on the internet. And I think most people will agree it tends to be toxic. So be mindful of what you're exposing yourself to, where you're going, what's triggering you, and then sit with the whys. Why did I feel that way when I saw that? And learn about yourself so that you can heal things that maybe you didn't realize you needed to heal, or that would benefit you to heal. Okay. And then, and just learn how to manage the others by learning how to manage yourself. Nobody else can make you feel a certain way. The trigger may, right? What they say or do may trigger you a certain way. And there are some people that try to go out of their way, and that will trigger us. However, that's an indication that maybe boundaries need to be set. Maybe this person really doesn't deserve access to me. And also, why did that hurt me? Why? Usually it's associated with some belief system or wound that we carry from our youth. It's not always necessarily 100% internal or external. It's really finding the balance between the two. And that balance often is, what do I need to heal, and how do I keep that person from being a jerk in my life? Right? And sometimes that does come down to pretty much removing them from your life, but not always. Again, balance is the opposite of all or nothing. It's finding that happy medium where both exist to some degree. Anyway, that's my 25 cents on balance and grounding. I could talk for hours on this, as I could with most subjects. So I am quite certain at some point in the future I will talk more on these topics. But this is really key, is finding our ground, finding the place where we feel safe, calm, so that when we are responding to anything, we're doing it from our best self, if you will. That doesn't mean it's always going to be right or that we're ever going to be perfect. But at least we know that we didn't go out there and just react on somebody because we didn't get ourselves grounded first. Because oftentimes those types of reactions can be re-traumatizing to ourselves and also damaging for others. And most people get upset because we care, right? So again, be mindful, which is aware of what we're putting out into the universe and what we're allowing ourselves to receive. Okay. All right. I didn't want to go a half hour, and here we are about a minute shy. I'm sorry. Have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you next Saturday, I guess. All right. Have a great one, and talk to you soon. Bye.